Hi, everyone. I'm Shaheen from The Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Eugene Nouril, a seasoned marketer based in the UK, currently the EMEA Marketing Director for JLL, a leading professional services firm. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So to get started, can you just tell us a bit about your background and how you got into your current role?
Yeah, sure. So I know a lot of people say this, but I don't have a traditional marketing background. I haven't studied marketing. Well, I have a little bit since I've got into it, but I didn't study it when I was younger. I played sports for a living. And then I tried to start a couple of my own businesses and could never quite work out why anyone an entrepreneur is trying to spend money on marketing or spend their budget on marketing. Because if you don't know the type of people you want to attract and what your brand should look like, then you're probably in the wrong game. So I really got interested in the marketing side, and off the back of those businesses, I ended up working for a B2B marketing agency, which produced a lot of content for some big clients. So I was an account director there, and we worked with Facebook, did some good projects with Google. But one of my main clients was JLL, a professional services firm in the real estate industry, who do all sorts of things from finding and leasing space to managing property to sort of designing and delivering home builds, to investing in real estate and advising where people should invest in real estate, and also have a real sort of technology and sustainability understanding around their whole business. And they were my client, and we did some really interesting projects together. And actually, I was always interested about how much they were trying to change the brand from just sort of white middle-aged men in suits standing in front of buildings to really moving the brand forward and trying to be, make the brand a differentiator and produce some really interesting content. And I ended up going to work for JLL 2 years ago as UK Marketing Director, and have moved recently into an EMEA-wide role at the start of this year.
Okay, so what's your day-to-day like in your current role?
Well, it's very varied. I mean, it can be anything from working with our new global brand campaign, which is promoting our purpose, which is shaping the future of real estate for a better world, which is trying to push boundaries, actually, because, as I mentioned before, our brand isn't super well known outside of the industry, and we've been tasked with making it so. So the fact that we're working on a big new brand campaign, it obviously takes up quite a lot of time. Alongside that, we've got a partnership with Bloomberg Green, a new sustainability channel that Bloomberg have launched at the start of this year. And I'm responsible for the EMEA campaign side of that. So picking and choosing our best part, our best case studies, the best way that we help our clients, and putting that through adverts on the channel is a big piece of my role. We're also trying to be as efficient as possible as a marketing function across Europe. So working with all the local teams to make sure that they're pushing back to the business from a self-service perspective where they should, and that we're not wasting too much time on low-value marketing tasks. Because in traditional industries and professional services firms, marketing has sometimes been seen as a support function rather than a strategic partner, which we're trying to get. Which I think we are now, but has been the task over the last few years is trying to help people understand that. So helping the business understand how marketing can help them and bring in more revenue. Also, the other things I'm involved in is planning some of our sustainability marketing, especially in the UK, where we're sort of industry leading on our net zero commitment, net zero carbon commitment, and a responsible business approach. Well, then it might be, another thing I might do is helping my team with brainstorms and that kind of thing. So, yeah, very varied. Each day is pretty different. There's a lot of presentations involved anyway to all the different people around Europe.
So which markets are included in the EMEA region?
So everyone from the Nordics to Southern Europe to France, Germany, Central Europe, Middle East, Turkey, South Africa. So it's a pretty wide region, and it makes up less than 50% of JLL's whole revenue, because the US is our largest market, but EMEA is the second largest, with UK the biggest region within that. So being based in London is really handy for working across all the different markets, because I can pick and choose the content that's coming out of the teams I know really well and try and leverage that across Europe, but obviously localizing it a little bit, because, different cultures and different audiences, you can't just plug and play. It would be really easy to do that, but we can't do that.
Yeah. So, and are you working in different languages in all the markets, I imagine?
So there's local marketing teams that will translate as and when needed, but I just work in English. Can't even say it. And we generally work in English with all the other teams, and the marketeers in the local teams will take key messaging and maybe try and translate that in terms of headlines, But a lot of the ad campaigns we do and that sort of thing are on English speaking platforms and channels. So our clients, who are generally sort of, C-suite and business decision makers, do work in English even in other countries as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting how, because I've talked to a lot of people from different industries, and it really depends on your audience and your market, like how much sense it makes to really localize, like on a language, like to the local language. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting, but you still need to like adapt in terms of culturally, or maybe just like, because you were saying that you do have to kind of, I mean, it's such a large region that I guess maybe the same tactics don't necessarily work in one versus another.
That's exactly it. I mean, you can never assume because one country is doing something that another will just follow. There's things that are, marketing 101 in the UK that are totally alien in somewhere like Poland or the Netherlands, where they just do things slightly differently. Now, from an investment side, a lot of our investment into EMEA comes from outside the borders or outside the region. So in the US or Asia, they'll invest into Europe from a real estate perspective. So in that way, the way we talk to an audience and messaging can be quite similar. But when it comes to local campaigns, different ways of doing business, different cultures. So patience and understanding is obviously required. And we really plug into the knowledge of the local marketing teams for them to tell us, well, maybe we should do this, maybe we shouldn't do that. What we're trying to do really is concentrate on themes that can be region-wide to take to market, so that we can kind of share resources across the whole of Europe, and then localize each campaign very slightly. So, for example, with the Bloomberg Green Purpose campaign that we're doing, we're taking EMEA-wide case studies where we've helped clients from a sustainability angle, and we've got slightly different case studies from Spain and France that we do from Northern Europe, for example, where sustainability means a slightly different thing, and responsible business is a wider umbrella that can take in health and well-being and that kind of thing, rather than just a greener space or the traditional sustainability piece. So there is a lot of variation from the different regions, but we do try and, off the back of obviously COVID, and we can't get away from it. Just trying to streamline what we do is really quite important.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier that that JLL has really been like kind of modernizing its approach and being like less stuffy and maybe injecting more personality, I guess, into the kind of content you do. I mean, how do you do that? How have they managed to do that?
Well, it's quite a traditional company, but we have. I mean, I'm not from a property background, and plenty of people that work there are not from a property background. So I think that the hiring over the last 5 years has tried to be slightly different. So not bringing people from the industry, and I think that's really worked to elevate some of the brand and content stuff that we do. That's not to say that there's not a huge amount of knowledge and interesting people that are working in this space, because they are. But when you combine people that think outside the box with people with the knowledge, and you do a brainstorm together, then that can be a sweet spot. I mean, social media, for example, is quite difficult in a traditional B2B area, but we tend to use it to profile build or to promote particular industry research or thought leadership, rather than just talk about our brand too much. So there was about 3 years ago, there was a big rebrand, a new look and feel that's really elevated our brand, so it looks quite different and quite powerful within our industry space. And the purpose work that I mentioned earlier is designed to take that look and feel and elevate it from a messaging level, so that people really get what we're trying to do as a company, and don't just put us in a real estate box, because we've got, I think, over 450 researchers. So the amount of content we produce is scary, but it's knowing which audiences, which clients will get the most out of it, and not just sort of just pumping stuff out all the time, and being a bit more measured and targeted. And also streamlining globally with other markets from a social media level, because now that obviously marketing budgets are hit as part of the kind of current health pandemic, we need to be really savvy about how we use it. So giving those researchers a voice and linking them back to our brand is something that is really useful. And things like live webinars are replacing sort of podcasts and that kind of thing, where we're getting industry experts, but also people, again, from outside the industry together to talk about issues such as climate change, what the built industry can really help with. So, and I guess alongside that, we have, in-house production and videos and creative campaigns where we produce everything, but it really needs to be underpinned by sustainability. And technology and our purpose that I mentioned earlier, and taking those as kind of snackable content bits, and pumping them out on social is also quite interesting as well. And I guess, the other thing we try to do is to use our content to cross-sell to different people, because we do so many different things. Some people know us as an investment firm. Some people know us as a property managing agent. Some people know us as a residential agency. We need to make sure when we're talking to those particular audiences that we're always talking about some of the other things and the other services we can provide, which might help them that they might not know about. So with that kind of approach of trying to cross-sell and trying to bring a global campaign locally, it can be quite busy, mm-hmm. as you can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely noticed that JLL seems to have on the topic of sourcing expertise from members of the team. Definitely, I can see there's lots of personalities and people speaking on behalf of the company. How is that managed, and how can anyone in the company be involved in a content piece, or how do they fit that into their regular role? Because I imagine their main job isn't creating content, right? They're experts in a certain area and they're contributing once in a while. So how do you?
Yeah, that's a really good observation. And actually, one of our main selling points to working with people is our people. We've got really smart people, and I know every company says that, but we really do. With 90,000 people globally, you're not going to fail to find people who can, really know their stuff and talk about it in a positive way. So it's nothing to do with levels. So we have junior people as well that we try and build profile on through PR and social media and other media sort of channels. And often it is part of their day job. So it might be part of their kind of, what they've planned out to work on for the whole year. But also it might be just that we try and have a broad list of people who are quotable. So for something like sustainability, which is so important at the moment, and actually really is something that everyone in the company needs to work on, and is embedding it into everything they do. There might be a surveyor that also knows about sustainability, so they can be quoted either in the press or on social or through an interview or on one of our videos. Then we also have the head of sustainability who will be able to talk about the same sort of things, right up to the board, who also have the same talking points circulated and are part of the same internal webinars that we produce to make sure that everyone is understanding what we're trying to do. So no, we very much encourage it. Anyone from any team can get involved with trying to sort of promote what we do as a company, and we think it works. Obviously, if you've noticed that through our website, then it probably is working. That's a good thing.
Definitely. And then also as someone, personally, my background's in journalism and I've moved into, creating content for brands. And I think there's obviously been a big shift in terms of media and brands creating their own content and being publishers and not having to rely on traditional media as much for advertising. But I'm curious, it seems like you mentioned this project you have with Bloomberg, or the partnership. So just curious about your thoughts on the role of traditional media and how much value that brings.
Well, I think it's changing. I think PR is something that is not dying out, but is less important. I think media is still, and actually I think the current health pandemic has seen us scale back a little bit, and some of the content that people are digesting online it's probably gone up than it was last year. But we have an in-house content team who write trends and insight articles that work with our researchers to create thought leadership pieces. And we always pump them out to different media partners as well, and through different media channels to see if there's something that they want to partner with or they want to promote. My thoughts about media in general is that it's a very, very powerful tool, and that's the issue is that you need to try and elevate from outside your industry. So for someone like us who are a professional services firm that generally people who don't use us don't know us about, it can be extremely strong for us to try and get into national press and that kind of thing, or quoted on something like sustainability where people actually like, oh, JLL, so what do they actually do? And then they realize that maybe they do need our services and would like to work with us, or at least talk to us about something. So that role of media is becoming or is just as important as it always was, if not more so, especially with marketing budgets being cut and the inability really to do large campaign pieces that in times gone by would have got your brand and your logo and your messaging to a wider market. However, the reason we partnered with Bloomberg Green was very much to increase our reach. So, Bloomberg Green have got 75 million subscribers. So for us, it's a real sweet spot in terms of the audience. So with launching our purpose and wanting to get it to a different audience, and there'll be 74.9 of those 75 million who don't know who we are, it's perfect for us to do that. So media partnerships is probably something that we would always look at.
Yeah, tapping into existing audience rather than obviously it takes time to build that on your own. But I imagine you're pursuing both strategies, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's move into your recommendations. So, would you recommend an influencer who you follow?
Well, Mark Ritson's always really interesting. He's written a really interesting article recently about, off the back of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is probably the most important thing that we're facing at the moment, and hopefully will continue to be on the top of every company's agenda. He wrote a really interesting piece about black boardrooms and the lack of black directors in boardrooms that was really interesting. But I guess I'm always looking for people that write about thinking outside the box and not just settling for, from a marketing perspective, that we do this because we've always done it. That just leads to sort of slack marketing and that tactical first approach that we're really trying to avoid. So anyone that writes about that stuff is always of interest to me. There's a few podcasts as well that are quite interesting. The founder podcast with Nathan Chan is good. It's slightly more entrepreneurial, but it also deals with big corporates as well, and talks about sort of how they went on their journey. Then Gary Vaynerchuk is always quite good for a quotable podcast as well, with the Gary V audio experience. I'm sure you know these ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a fan of all.
Yeah.
So, great. So, well, for the next recommendation, a professional event or resource you recommend?
Any of the Gartner webinars have been really interesting. I've listened to a couple during lockdown. Thankfully, we're coming out of it, but they've been really interesting, and I think something that anyone should watch if they're interested in marketing. They keep it quite broad, so yeah.
Okay, cool. I actually haven't watched those yet, so I'll definitely check that out.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm happy if I know something that you don't, so that's good.
Definitely, I'm sure there's quite a few things.
Yeah.
And well, your favorite app at the moment?
There's a few, but probably Netflix, because while I'm on back-to-back video calls a day, it can keep my daughter quiet. So just give her my phone. It's not the best parenting advice, but at least it will keep her quiet. So probably the Netflix app for now. And actually, now that soccer's started back up, Sky Go on my phone is always good to get back into sport as we come out of the lockdown.
Yeah, and I'm sure people will be curious, like, what professional sport did you play? Or
football, soccer.
Football. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll have to Google to learn more about that, I guess, because we're out of time.
Yeah.
But well, thank you so much for those tips, and thanks for being on the podcast.
No, thanks a lot, Shaheen. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. And thanks everybody for listening in. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out thecontentmix.com and keep tuning into the podcast every weekday. See you next time.